After a very long time of only watching Gundam and Macross related shows, I started to get tired. Well, tired is not the correct feeling. I'll definitely never get tired of Gundam nor Macross, yet you start to get to know too well the tropes of both shows. War crimes, idols, child soldiers, ace pilots, the classic tropes of those franchises. So I decided to step a little bit back from those shows, and then Witch from Mercury dropped a tremendous piece of information regarding Prospera and her child. But this is not about Gundam. As you may have already seen, I started uploading a couple of short videos of my Gunpla and Plamo in general. I tried to include some tidbits of extra information that I found interesting. And everything changed once I got to the Hyakushiki. You see, the Hyakushiki was designed by Mamoru Nagano, and originally it was meant to be the titular Gundam for Zeta Gundam. Obviously, that didn't happen, but his gold-colored mobile suit was kept as Quattro's vehicle. Now, Nagano has a very close relationship with Gundam and Tomino, as prior to Zeta, those two worked on Heavy Metal L game. Nagano in fact has an apocryphal double Zeta Gundam design that looks super interesting, yet it never saw the light. Now, while doing the research for the Hyakushiki short video, I discovered that Nagano has been working on what many refer to as his magnum opus since the mid-80s. I'm talking about the legendary 5-star stories, which, aside from the name, I'm ashamed to admit that I've never given it a chance. So, having already said that I was getting a little bit too tired of Gundam and Macross, and with this new piece of information regarding Mamoru Nagano, I obviously had to take a look at the world of the 5-star stories. And my friends, to say that it is an ambitious story is totally an understatement. The scope of the still unfinished story spans millennia, with dynasties that can trace their lineage to the very first kings and knights of the Joker star cluster, with artificial humans with computer-like brains that can live for hundreds of years and control the new weapons of mass destruction called the Mortar Heads, or GothicMade, depending on the version of the story you're reading. It's absolutely weird and regal and definitely a breath of fresh air after all that Gundam. Now, the best way to get the whole scope of the story is through the manga, an ongoing series that started on 1986. But that's something not so easy since some volumes have not yet been translated. So if you don't speak Japanese like me, the next best thing is to watch the movie that was released in 1989. The film mostly adapts and summarizes the first volume of the manga. It truly is a great starting point for the series since you definitely get the idea that the world, or should I say the galaxy of the 5-star stories, is brimming with life and adventures. With that said, I'll stick to the film plot. So my friends, my name is Absa, and it's time now to talk about the beautiful and ambitious scope of the 5-star stories. A saga so grand that probably it will never get finished, and that's perfectly okay. As I usually do, I already spoke a lot about the 5-star stories without saying anything about it other than the fact that it was made by Mamoru Nagano and that it started more or less before Zeta Gundam and after Heavy Metal L game. So what's it about? And I quote, "The 5-star stories takes its name from the Joker star cluster where the stories take place. The star cluster is made up of 4 stars. Eastern, Western, Southern, and Northern. The 5th star is a large comet named Stant that passes through that sector of space every 1500 years, pulling with its own collection of orbiting planets. In the distant past, the Pharaohs, the Canon Empire, now commonly known as the Super Empire, controlled all 4 solar systems of the Joker cluster. They enjoyed a level of technology much higher than it is currently known and sent explorers to the far reaches of the Joker galaxy. Around the year 9000 AD, Amondul, the empire collapsed due to internal strife. the explorers were called home and what remained of civilization focused mainly on survival. Much technology and knowledge was lost by the time the imperial families of Amaterasu, Fillmore, and Hatua gathered and established the JC era. JC stands for Joker Calendar and was meant to give a common frame of reference to all nations to help foster a lasting peace. The JC calendar was adopted, but the dream of peace was never realized. The first story of the 5-star stories begins in JC 2988. Yeah, that tells us absolutely nothing. Anyway, the worlds of 5-star stories are Earth-like with human population. The only thing different is that humans may have cybernetic devices such as eyes and arms, and there's also very few humans who are capable of piloting the mechas, here called Mortar Headds, since it requires a lot of skill and intelligence. These elite humans are called headliners and are usually helped by Fatimas, artificial lion forms who are almost woman-like humans, with the main difference being that their brain processing power is way above ours. The protagonist, at least the movie's protagonist, is Ladios Sop, a Mortar Head Meister, meaning someone who goes around building roads. He is friends with a Dr. Crombalanche, a very important background character that is responsible for the creation of the best Fatimas. In fact, the movie starts with him telling her new creation that he is sorry for her new fate and that as soon as she reemerges, nothing will be the same. Now, the great thing about the 5-star stories is that even though the story sounds absurdly complex, it really isn't. At least what's happening in the center stage. Yet the backdrop, that's where all of the politicking and conspiracies are truly happening. In essence, the movie tells the story of Larios, his pal Bullard, and a gala for the possession of the Fatimas, Lachesis, and Clotho. And if you're like me, you may be wondering where you have heard those names before. Fatima is a feminine name of Arabic origin, meaning captivating, shining one, and one who is beautiful like the stars. Fatima sounds a lot like fate, and definitely, not coincidentally, the Fates are the Greek personifications of destiny. They were 3 sisters: Clotho, the spinner, Lachesis, the lover, and Atropos, the unreturnable or death. Even though I have not read the manga, I'm pretty sure that the main Fatimas being named like the Fates is something that will play into the story. Something that I haven't said about the Fatimas is that since they're much more advanced than us humans, they are subject to mind control procedure that makes them obey their master. Yet, Dr. Balanche's new Fatimas are not under mind control. Now, Larios is a longtime friend of the Doctor, and he was there when the Fatimas were just created and were almost like little girls. In fact, such was the bond between Larios and Lachesis that she told him to build a golden mortar head so that they could marry in front of the golden machine. Back to the present day, and after a super info dump that jumpstarts the movie, Larios is fine-tuning a mortar head when he encounters Vullards and then decide to go to the capital Vastongi. Reason for this is the Fatima Gala or Fatima presentation, where Clotho and Lachesis are going to be finally introduced to their new headliner. Here we also meet the ruler of this city, Juba Barada, who is hosting such a ceremony, but from the character design we can understand that he is totally corrupt and greedy. Immediately, Clotho breaks free and starts to run away until she is cornered by some gang members, but fortunately a gallant knight is there to save her, who coincidentally is none other than King Colus III. And yes, by now I have to add something that you may be wondering. The names are super weird, and it doesn't help that there are a lot of characters in the movie. And well, you can't really do anything about it other than try to pay attention and thank the character designers that their designs are sufficiently different to be able to distinguish one from another. And overall, this is the one main complaint that I have. It's a very dense story happening in multiple territories with a very broad cast of characters told in a very compressed time frame. So sometimes you may not know who or where or what they are referring to. But don't worry that much about it. Even the manga has very lengthy explanations telling who is who and what happens when. Again, it is a very ambitious story. Anyway, the Fatima Clotho decides to stay with Colus III, and since the Mirage Knights were also looking for her, and conveniently they can authorize a Fatima's final decision to unite with a headliner, Clotho gets to stay with the king. Moving on, Larios is told that he needs to get back to Lachesis, that she loves him and that he must not keep running away. Lachesis is then almost molested by her keeper, since if she keeps on postponing her union, he can still keep her. And lo and behold, that same night, Larios has an otherworldly visit by apparently his ex-wife, who is still in love with him but knows that he must go on with Lachesis. Yeah, super weird, but let's not lose focus on the important things. Finally, the ceremony for the union of Fatima Lachesis is undergoing, and again, she chooses no one. But just as Larios was running away again, he decides to defy everything and return to her lover. So through the streets and through the crowd, Larios runs towards his Lachesis and steals her. Obviously, it was never going to be that simple, so Juba sent his guards. What follows next is a very gorgeous, albeit short, mecha fight with the legendary Knight of Gold created by Sop in response to a long-thought-lost request by Lachesis before she underwent her final programming cycle. And something else is also explained that, considering the fact that the movie is almost 40 years old, I could definitely spoil it. But I won't, because it's something that makes you think, oh, so that's why it seems so odd and weird. It's a really beautiful ending for the opening act of the 5-star stories, and at least for me, it managed to capture my interest and decide to keep looking for more information. So if you're like me and want something else, something that is a little bit more experimental but still within the ill-defined mecha genre, you can dip your toes in the best world of the 5-star stories with this movie. And with this, I finish my completely bizarre way of exploring the movie, but I still have a couple of things left to say. Something that may bother you and prevent you from entering the world of the 5-star stories is that it still remains unfinished, and the only way to get the full story is through the manga, which also happens to remain untranslated for the latter volumes. So yeah, it's not that very easy, yet there's something very unique in the manga format that can't be matched by anything else. It's the only medium where we get the unfiltered creation of the author. Nagano had a very prolific career in the 80s, and as his art style progressed, his creations changed. So much so that 10 years ago he revamped the whole story with a new movie. GothicMade is a Japanese sci-fi mech anime film directed by Mamoru Nagano that debuted in Japan on November 1st, 2012. Such were his new perspectives of the story that as of the 2013 May issue of New Tape, the lore of the 5-star stories was retconned to better match the movie lore. Notable things that changed were the words Mortar Head, that was renamed to GothicMade, while Fatimas have been renamed as Automatic Flowers. The mechanical designs were also completely overhauled, with slimmer and more angular silhouettes dominating over the previous thick and blocky designs. This makes it even harder to get into the story, and to make matters even worse, the GothicMade movie to this day hasn't been released on DVD or Blu-ray, since the author thinks that watching it on a home screen would be a disservice to the film. Good thing is that if you live in Japan, you can still catch reruns of the movie in theaters. And if you don't, well, you and I can only speculate. Back to what I was saying. Is Nagano's singular vision of his saga so compelling as to make you hunt for his stories like a crazy man? Well, maybe if you like his designs. I can appreciate the beautiful line work of his Mortar Heads, but they're not my cup of tea. And while I may also think that confining a movie to only theaters is overkill, it's his decision and he's definitely not doing it for the money, so he can do whatever he wants. On the other hand, something that I came to realize thanks to his movie is the fact that the mecha genre is super flexible when used by the right hands. It's not that I got tired of Gundam or Macross, it's just that I got a little bit tired of space war stories. But the mecha genre has a ton of more stories that don't even happen in space. Scaflone, Magic Knight Dreyert, and even Dunbine have a setting completely devoid of high-tech and interstellar travel. With 5-star stories, I came to realize that the mecha genre is so much more than just robot shows. That mecha in and of itself is not a genre per se, and more like an ingredient of a show. I got so narrow-sighted with Gundam and Macross that I missed a whole lot of super diverse shows. And now I'm curious to know, what are your favorite shows that took the mecha genre to completely unexpected places? I'm looking forward to your suggestions, and don't worry, I'll still talk about Gundam and Macross. I just needed a breath of fresh air. Thank you very much to those of you who stayed to the very end. I know that I have not been consistent at all with my uploads, but I was getting my schedule straight so that I can do more things with this project. As you may have noted, I started doing short form content, but to be honest, I feel much more comfortable with long form, so I'm trying to come up with a new way of showing my Plamo builds and talking about the mecha lore in the same video. Anyway, stay tuned for more information about that super soon, since as you may already have seen, I try to do something kind of different, a different type of review with the YF19 of Isamu Dyson, the HG from Bandai, but I don't know if you like it like that with no text or words, or if you like a little bit more of my interpretation, of my experience of the build itself. So please leave it in the comments also if you like HG reviews like that with nothing, or if you prefer something else. And as you may or may not know, my name is Absa, and we can continue the conversation over at Twitter, where you can follow me at Absalonicas, and on Instagram, where I post pictures of my figures, my cats, and sometimes even myself. I'll be trying to talk more about anime, comics, and definitely mechanical design via model kits or maybe Chowakins. But till next time, always remember that in fiction lies power, so let's use it to forge a new type of story. Our hero's journey.